Good evening. Welcome to this special gathering presented by American Ancestors. 10 Million Names, a conversation about African-American family history and healing, featuring two extraordinary voices, Marc Morial and Kenyatta D. I'm Ryan Woods, President and CEO of American Ancestors, the nation's oldest genealogical organization, founded in 1845 and committed ever since to preserving and sharing the stories that define who we are. It is our great privilege to lead the 10 Million Names Project, a collaborative and deeply human endeavor to recover, restore, and remember the names and family histories of the estimated 10 million men, women, and children of African descent who were enslaved in America. As someone who counts many of my own ancestors among the 10 million, this project is both profoundly personal and professionally urgent. It is my honor to serve as your host tonight. Let me begin by extending heartfelt thanks to Marc Morial and his colleagues at the National Urban League for their partnership in helping bring this important conversation to life. I also want to acknowledge and thank the distinguished members of the 10 Million Names Advisory Board. These national leaders bring with them vast networks, philanthropic wisdom, and an unwavering commitment to truth and justice. They are Gwil York, Paula Madison, Henry Louis Gates Jr., Crystal M. Jackson, Maddie McFadden Lawson, Richard Cellini, and our esteemed honorary board members, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and Ambassador Michael A. Lawson. Our work is also guided and enriched by two extraordinary councils. The Scholars Council, comprised of leading historians and thought leaders, bring deep expertise in African American history. Members include Dr. Kendra Field, Tufts University, who serves as our chief historian, Dr. Vincent Brown of Harvard University, Dr. Carrie Greenwich of Tufts University, Dr. Tavolia Glimpf of Duke University, and Dr. Brandon Terry of Harvard University. And the Genealogist Council, who ensure our work is rigorous, inclusive, and accessible. They bring vital experience in uncovering family histories across generations and geographies. We are privileged to work with Kenyatta D, past president of the Association of Professional Genealogists, Dr. Shelley Murphy of the University of Virginia, and Tom Reed of Family Search International. Together, these advisors, scholars, and researchers provide the foundation of knowledge, perspective, and care that makes this project possible. Thank you also to our National Host Committee for this event, especially our incomparable co-chairs, Gwil York and Paula Madison, and members Dee Brown, Valerie DeCruz, Mary Beth Gassman, William Gibson, Lynch W. Hunt Jr., Russell Jones, Mel and Pearl Shaw, and Kyle Williams. Your passion, connections, and advocacy have helped make this evening a reality. And we are deeply grateful to our sponsors, to the Community Foundation of the Virgin Islands, and especially to Dee Brown. Your visionary partnership has elevated not only this event, but our youth education program as well, serving the U.S. Virgin Islands and beyond. Your commitment ensures that the young people of the U.S. Virgin Islands grow up knowing their roots and knowing they belong to something enduring, resilient, and powerful. We also thank the Office of the Vice President of Social Equity and Community at the University of Pennsylvania for your meaningful support. The 10 Million Names Project is more than an initiative. It is a sacred calling. It is a national effort to restore what was taken, to repair bonds that were broken, and to remember what was nearly erased. The institution of slavery severed family ties, obscured identities, and rendered generations nearly invisible in the historical record. But through this work, Through 10 million names, we are reclaiming those names, reuniting families, and returning dignity to stories long untold. This is a journey of history, yes, but it is also a journey of healing. Each name recovered is a life restored to memory. Each family story rediscovered becomes a thread in the larger fabric of American identity. We do this not only to honor the past, but to empower the future. Because every name matters, every family matters, and every story deserves to be told. I now invite you to turn your attention to a short mini documentary generously supported by the Herman J. Russell Family Foundation that brings the life and mission of 10 million names to you in a compelling manner.
Many of our ancestors lived and died without any record to show they even existed. Like us, they had hopes, they had dreams, and they had names. I'm Henry Louis Gates Jr., host of the PBS series, Finding Your Roots. You're about to hear about a groundbreaking initiative that seeks to identify our 10 million ancestors by their given names.
By 1865, 10 million Africans and African Americans had been enslaved in the United States. Prior to the 1870 census, the men, women, and children whose forced labor helped build this nation were listed as part of their enslavers' household inventory.
We find them on property lists alongside the sheep and the horses and the cattle and the pigs. That's where we find Black people listed as property. So you might have their names, an age, a sex, but what you won't have is their connections to other people.
Harvard history professor Vincent Brown is among a council of Black scholars, Black genealogy groups, and individuals collaborating with American ancestors to launch the historic 10 Million Names Project. American Ancestors is creating an online repository that will contain the documented family history of enslaved Africans and African Americans in the U.S.
I would say that for many, many people living today, it is very difficult to get back to before emancipation, right? So genealogists often refer to the brick wall of 1870. 1870 is the first federal census where we get a ton of names of African Americans in the United States. But there are names before 1870, and as a historian, I come across them all the time, as do my peers. It's just that we never quite imagined there would be one place where all this information could live and interact.
I think people will be very excited about it, and I know that I'm looking forward to the database itself and being able to do research, hopefully for my own family.
Richard Cellini is the founder of 10 Million Names. It's a major expansion of the research that he started in 2015. That's when he hired genealogists to trace more than 300 men, women, and children who were enslaved and sold in 1838 by his alma mater, Georgetown University.
Today, the Society of Jesus, who helped to establish Georgetown University and whose leaders enslaved and mercilessly sold your ancestors, stands before you to say that we have greatly sinned.
And I had a question, but my question had nothing to do with Georgetown. What happened to them? What happened to the people?
To date, Cellini's Georgetown Memory Project has identified 236 enslaved people and more than 10,000 of their direct descendants.
And after we started looking into it, we realized by counting up the number of people who had been enslaved in what is now the United States of America, that it would be 10 million names. And we could take those 10 million names and trace them forward and connect them to the approximately 42 million Black people in the country alive today.
Lynn Nehemiah's life changed when her DNA test kit results led her to online notations about her ancestors' ties to Georgetown.
And so when I discovered this connection to this very rich and deep family history going back, 400 years, it really made me realize just how connected I am to this country and the significance of my family's role in the making of this country.
To raise awareness about 10 million names, American Ancestors partnered with the National Association of Black Journalists and its president, Dorothy Tucker. Tucker knew that her great-great-grandfather, George Trice, purchased 160 acres of land in North Mississippi in the 1880s. She was surprised when American Ancestors Vice President of Research found deeds that showed Trice's land purchase was double.
So these are the two plots of land that he purchases, which is where the family lives today.
This is a 320
acres.
acres.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It's kind of, you hear, the oral history is passed along, and it's just something that you grow up knowing, but to actually see the map, see the documentation, it really just kind of, it's so gratifying.
Just as journalism sends you deeper to uncover more facts, journalism sends you deeper in order to gain better perspective. That's exactly what 10 Million Names is doing. It will uncover more fact-based information. It will allow for a deeper and broader perspective and context to be developed. And that's why when they came to me and asked my thoughts, I said, we will have to partner with the National Association of Black Journalists.
Whether you're white or black, if you know that in your closet or in your attic are letters or diaries or account books related to slavery, you should contact American Ancestors because you have a vital piece of the puzzle. This is going to take the labor of the entire nation many, many decades to achieve. It's not a special project that's being done by a specialized group of people sitting in Boston. This is going to involve everybody.
To fulfill the work of the 10 Million Names Project, we are searching archives, oral histories, plantation records, Freedmen Bureau documents, wills, estate inventories, church records, and more, across all 50 states and beyond. Since the launch of the project in August 2023, we have recovered some 1 million names and published 15 searchable databases. We've done so by forming partnerships across communities and institutions to expand this work together. And you can discover all that has been achieved to date at 10millionnames.org. From its inception, this has been a bold and ambitious effort to amplify the voices of those speaking to us from the past, to spark collaboration across disciplines, and to harness technology, volunteer power, and philanthropic support in an unprecedented project to recover and reconnect African-American family histories at a national scale. Tonight, we take the next bold step. This evening marks the official launch of the 10 Million Names Grassroots Campaign, a national call to action to help power this historic work forward together. The success of the 10 Million Names Project depends not only on institutions and experts, but on people. People like you. Whether you're a student, a teacher, a community or faith leader, a genealogist, a historian, or someone who simply believes in truth and justice and remembrance, we invite you to join us. This is a people-powered movement. You'll receive a personal invitation by email to become part of this campaign. But before we go any further, I invite you to take meaningful action now. On your screen, you'll see a QR code. Take a moment to scan it. If you're able to make a gift, it will go directly to the 10 Million Names Challenge campaign. a generous matching fund established by committed supporters who believe in this work and want to help it grow. Thanks to their remarkable generosity, every dollar will be doubled up to a total of $500,000 now through August 34th. This is more than a donation. It's an act of restoration. It's a way to help us recover 1 million more names, to reconnect more families to their stories, and ensure that the truths of our shared past are preserved and honored for generations to come. If you've ever wondered what you could do to make a difference, this is it now. Family history is a source of joy, inspiration, education, and empowerment. It helps us understand who we are, where we come from, and how we are connected to one another. And for many, it is also a profound means of healing and repair. Through the 10 Million Names Project, we've had the privilege of helping individuals uncover lost chapters of their family stories, moments of discovery that bring the past into the present with power and clarity. I invite you now to take a look at just a few of these remarkable discovery stories, each one a testament to the transformative impact of truth, memory, and connection.
I'm struck by this quote, which says, in part, "Get in and stay in the streets of every city, every village and hamlet of this nation until true freedom comes, until the revolution of 1776 is complete." The words of the late Congressman John Lewis.
It is a struggle that my great-great-great-grandfather participated in from the start and continues to this day.
I didn't actually think I would be emotional about it. But being with this kind of living document that I can only imagine, you know, what Toby had to endure, and I can't help but feel pride.
She said it was an amazing day for her. Oh, they danced a while and celebrated out in the dirt and kicked up their heels. They were free. I know she did. Oh, it's amazing.
While imagining the joy her grandmother felt, she also feels a joy of her own.
This is your daddy.
This is
yes,
your dad.
This is your dad.
This
yes.
is your daddy.
This is your dad.
Look at that.
For the first time, Willie Mae sees her father's World War II registration card.
I'm rejoicing. I'm so happy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so happy because just to know that this is where we come from.
Exactly.
And I would love to know more and more and more.
I was proud of knowing that my people could overcome something as horrible and as horrific as slavery. Mm. But I think intellectually I wanted to start my family's history with my grandmother. Mm-hmm. To go back too far is maybe too painful. And so I finally agreed reluctantly to do this digging. So as I'm riding to this property, the first thing I'm thinking, it's hot. It must have been like this for my ancestors. Hot, working in the fields. The pressure of it was building more and more of just the feeling of being in bondage. Thank you keeps coming to mind for Adeline. Thank you. Thank you for the will to survive. Thank you for the will not to give up.
It is now my pleasure to introduce the next part of our program, a conversation about African-American family history and healing with Marc Morial and Kenyatta D. Marc Morial is the president and CEO of the National Urban League. Over the last 15 years, Marc has expanded the reach of the League's services by empowering its affiliate movement and developing a framework to create policies that serve communities of color. As mayor of New Orleans from 1994 to 2002, Marc led New Orleans' renaissance and left office with a 70% approval rating. He is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in economics and African American studies and holds a law degree from Georgetown University. He is also the author of the Gumbo Coalition, a collection of lessons on the power of unity in our democracy and a leadership framework for America's changemakers. Kenyatta D. is an attorney, lecturer, professional genealogist, television personality, and author of the Family Tree Toolkit, a comprehensive guide to uncovering your ancestry and researching genealogy. She is the past president of the Association of Professional Genealogists, and in 2023, the association awarded the first Kenyatta D. African American Research Scholarship. In 2019, she was the honorary chair of Preservation Week and was recently named a newsmaker in American Libraries Magazine, a publication of the American Library Association. Kenyatta was a genealogical contributor to the New York Times for the 1619 Project, and her work has been featured in Black Enterprise, Good Housekeeping, The Wall Street Journal, and Woman's World. A host of Genealogy Roadshow on PBS, she brought her insights and genealogical expertise to millions of people. And now I'm delighted to invite Marc and Kenyatta to turn on their cameras and microphones, and it's my pleasure to turn the program over to them for what promises to be an inspiring and meaningful conversation.
Hello, hi, Marc.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. So nice to meet you virtually.
Hey,
I'm
great.
excited about our conversation.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so my first question, of course, is share with us what you know about your family history.
Well, thank you. And I'm excited to be able to do this. And it's great to be on with you. So I'll talk about my family history on both sides, the maternal line and the paternal line. And I'll start with the paternal line. So what I know about my family history on the paternal side is that our ancestry dates back to those who came from Haiti to New Orleans in around 1805, 6, 7, 8, and 9 during the Haitian Revolution and the aftermath of the Haitian Revolution, when tens of thousands of people left Haiti and came to New Orleans. They were some enslaved, some free, some were even European. And that community, some almost 15, 20,000, swelled the ranks of New Orleans and created a community in the Treme and 7th Ward area that's quite historic. So that side of the family is of Haitian descent. My father's family, my father's parents, Leonie and Walter Morial, both spoke Creole in the house, as did many of their relatives. And that's my father's side. On my mother's side, we trace our lineage back to the Whitney Plantation. The Whitney Plantation, now known as the Whitney Slavery Museum, is in a place called Wallace, Louisiana. It's up the river on the west bank of the Mississippi from New Orleans, almost midway between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. It was sugarcane and indigo country. And our ancestors named Anna and Victor. Anna was the mother, Victor was the son. Anna was impregnated by the master of the plantation's younger brother. And so Victor and Anna lived on that plantation from the 1820s and 30s until 1860, 63, when the Emancipation Proclamation freed them. As they were freed, Victor also was married to an enslaved woman, Celeste Becknell, who was from another nearby plantation, which was a site of the 1811 revolt and uprising by people taking a stab for their own freedom. And the two of them, after emancipation, moved to Wallace, Louisiana, a small community, literally, half a mile from the front entrance of the plantation, where the newly freed Black people, people of color, created homes. Some of them were sharecroppers, and some of them continued to work on the plantation even after slavery ended. That family and the family named Hydell began in the early 1900s, after Jim Crow and after very difficult conditions, began to migrate downriver to New Orleans. So my mother's father, who grew up in Wallace, ended up going to college in New Orleans at Freight University, which was the predecessor to Dillard University, in the teens, and then went to Howard University School of Medicine in the early 1920s. He was the oldest of 9 and quite a guy in terms of being multi-talented. He was, in one hand, a farmer. He was a doctor. He built the largest Black insurance company in Louisiana, Standard Life Insurance Company, and built all of that in New Orleans. And that's my grandfather, my late grandfather, my mother's father. He was active in civic affairs. He was a supporter of the NAACP. He was on the board of the New Orleans Urban League. I have a photo of him and Martin Luther King and my father in 1957, when Dr. King came to New Orleans to found the FCLC. And so that's my maternal lineage. So we can trace our lineage back to the Whitney Slavery Museum. And it must be said, we owe real debt of gratitude to a number of our family members and also to a lawyer named John Cummings, who created the Whitney Slavery Museum, bought that plantation many, many years ago, and created a museum and hired a Senegalese scholar by the name of Ibrahima Seck, who literally went and helped all of us identify our family lineage. It was Seck who identified that Victor and Anna were enslaved on that plantation. We had heard their names, we knew something about them, and he identified it by looking at baptismal records and estate records. On the estate records of the plantation, Victor and Anna were listed as property with a valuation at that particular point in time. So it's a story we are so happy to know and energized to know. But for years, it was vague. As a little boy, I would go with my grandparents up to St. John the Baptist Parish to visit my great-grandparents' grave. And they really didn't have a lot to say, except our ancestors were from there. They were sharecroppers and farmers. We didn't know a lot. They didn't talk about it a lot. I give great credit to my mother. My late mother was a teacher and an educator, for really driving our knowledge base about our family history and really leaning into making sure we understood what that history was. And so it's really been in the last 15 years that we've been able to construct the mysteries around our family on our maternal side, and some mysteries about our family on our father's side. And so it's a quintessential, story of a family with lineage from 2 different strands of Black South Louisiana, those from the plantation and those of Haitian descent.
And so that fantastic story. And I mean, for you to know that much about your family history, you're very fortunate, obviously, as you know. You mentioned your mom in the past 15 years. I mean, who was sort of the keeper and kind of the family stories and helped you discover this stuff?
She was a keeper of the family stories to a great extent. And she began to work with John Cummings and Ibrahima Seck, who were doing the research, and John Cummings envisioning the plantation and two of my cousins, the Banner sisters, who really were the driving force behind the creation of this slavery museum. So my mother was really the keeper. My mother was really the driver. My mother was really the inspirer of our knowledge and our understanding of the family history. My grandfather was a great guy. He was a man, sort of a quiet-spoken person. And she said that the kind of culture in those days was not to talk a lot about slavery. They didn't talk about it. They understood it was kind of in the back. Yeah. I think civil rights and the Black Power movement and the cultural awakening that went along with the Black consciousness movement created, I think, in my generation, my mother's generation, a sense of pride and a desire and an understanding to understand the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And to understand. And for my mother's family, the power is that from that family and that enslaved mother and her son on that plantation, they became prolific. My father was one of 9. There were so many of them, right? Many large families of 7, 8, 9. Yeah. And they became doctors and funeral home owners and florists and entrepreneurs. I had one uncle who was a chemist, made black hair care and cosmetic products, sold it like a barnstorming salesman up and down the river. Another one of my grandfather's brothers owned a neighborhood grocery store. I remember we used to go there. And all I wanted to do was get what's called a hand sucker. It was like a thing on a stick that was shaped like a hand that you would lick. Let's go by Uncle Wick's store and get a hand sucker. That's all I wanted. But out of the family, it was amazing how accomplished. 2 cousins became the first Esso, that's the predecessor to Exxon, service stations in 1950. And I remember my grandfather would only buy gas from his cousin's service station. I didn't understand it that well because he'd be running out of gas way on this side of town. He's got to get way back over here. That's the only place he was going to buy gas. The only place, he was going to buy flowers was from, Heidel's Flower Shop, which was owned by another cousin. I mean, the ecosystem of these Black business owners supporting each other is very much the community that I grew up in.
And so you said something that was very interesting to me around slavery, where they didn't talk about it, leave the past in the past. But with civil rights and everything, it became something they talked about, and then you learned so much more about your family through that. But in knowing this, like, what does it mean to you to know your family history?
It means, for me, it's the inspiration to work to dismantle the system of racism and oppression that still plagues America today. It's the inspiration to understand that many of the challenges that people face are not because of individual shortcomings, that not, ordained because of lack of determination, drive, and responsibility. But it also is an understanding that no matter how great oppression is, there will always be those who will overcome. There's always somebody that can jump the 10-foot wall. Everybody shouldn't jump the 10-foot wall, and the wall shouldn't be 10 feet high over here and 3 feet high over there, but somebody's going to jump the 10-foot wall. So it's understanding that sometimes contradiction is that accomplishment and achievement notwithstanding the barriers, but how the barriers can indeed hold people back. But it's also been affirming because it's something that we can share with my children, my nieces, my nephews, a sense of pride. There's a sense of empowerment when you can connect with your family history. And you can understand that family history. And you can understand it. If you travel down my maternal line, it takes you to southeastern Louisiana and the Whitney Plantation. Now, we've been trying for years, and we think that Anna, who was my great-great-great-grandmother, who was enslaved on that plantation, may have been sold into slavery from Virginia, which was very common after 1808, when the Underground Railroad, they were concerned. So one of the things that plantation owners in places like Maryland and Virginia did was sold people down south, where it was much more difficult to be able to escape. We think, but we've not been able to connect that dot. We'd like to be able to connect that dot even further. So our journey to understand and connect our family history is just beginning. It by no means am I satisfied that knowing Anna and Victor is enough. I want to know before Anna.
Right. And so you mentioned something which I smiled a little bit when you said Virginia, because I always say all roads lead to Virginia, right? And that's where my family is from. But as part of, you mentioned something about how important it is now. So expand on that. How critical is it for folks to know about their family history today, given the climate that we're in, given things that are going on? What sort of inspiring words would you say to someone who feels like they may not want to go down that road? And, you know, and why it's important for them?
We owe it to our children and our children's children. One of the levers of oppression was to rob us of our language, our family history, and our names, and completely separate. And it was much easier to devalue a person when they didn't know they're of kings and queens. They didn't know that they were of great civilizations in West Africa that had wealth, that had culture, that had skills. And suppressing that was part of how American racism operated, to say that Black people contributed not, and Black people had no value. Black people were not intelligent. They could only do physical labor. That's because this is why Black people were brought to North America and to the Americas at all, was to do heavy physical labor in an agricultural industry that created tremendous wealth for America, for South America, for the Caribbean. And that wealth ended up in the hands of others, not in the hands of those that tilled the soil, picked the cotton, shucked the sugar cane, grew the tobacco. No, it went to others. And so that's important for us to understand. You know, there's a sense of you gotta be authentic. This business that you might make people feel uncomfortable is so bizarre and absurd. And I tell people, I said, if that's the standard, why do we talk about the crucifixion of Jesus Christ if you're a Christian? It's a violent act. Makes people feel uncomfortable. That's not a standard by which the standard should be truth, authenticity, and accuracy.
And I appreciate that. I just have, and thank you so much. I mean, I've learned so much in our conversation, but I do have one last question for you. So I know that the National Urban League has endorsed the 10 Million Names Project. Why make that endorsement?
We believe that everyone should embrace, study, pursue their ancestry. Period, full stop. For pride, for affirmation, for many, many reasons. And because Black people have been denied, this is a way of overcoming that denial. The tools that are available, I'll give you an example. One rainy day, maybe about 8 to 10 years ago, I spent the afternoon on Ancestry looking up, and I found interesting things and relatives I didn't know existed by looking at the 1900 and the 1910 census and the 1920 census. And I'll give you one example. My grandmother always told me, and she told my mother, that her father, my great-grandmother's husband, had died in an accident of some sort. And I told my mother, I said, well, something's not accurate about that story because it seems to be existing in the 1930 census. My mother said, what? I said, now I knew my great grandmother. She was quite a lady. And I think she was not beyond spinning a tale, right?
Expanding the truth a little bit.
She told her kids, man, your daddy died, right? He might have ran off, she might have put him out, right? Knowing her, she probably put him out, right? So you learn interesting things. I told my mother, she said, well, how do you know that? How can that be true? I said, Mom, I looked at the thing. He gave me his name. I looked him up. He's living on the other side of town. She said, what? I said, yep. Anyway, I think it's important. It's interesting to learn elements and aspects. And it's affirming, if the Irish and the Italians, people of the Jewish heritage, can in fact learn their ancestry. I've got a colleague here who's an Italian American who told me she's been on a journey to identify the town where her grandparents lived in Italy. So she could visit it. And she said if she can prove her ancestry, she can pick up dual citizenship in Italy. Yep. And so it's interesting to hear her story, trying to identify that ancestry. And it's important for us to pursue, to understand and connect the dots. Think 500 years from now, or 300 years from now, someone will be able to say, we were related to Kenyatta Berry, right? And look at it. We traced her all the way down. We knew where she was from. We knew she loved to wear pink blouses.
I do love pink, by the way.
And,
yes.
and they'll not only be able to identify you, but there'll be a YouTube video. And we know, but I always wonder, what did Frederick Douglass sound like? What did he really look like? How did he move? We don't have access to that information. We have access to stories about them, some grainy photos of them. Next generation and generation subsequent will have far more information and far more tools to learn and understand and know who we are.
Well, this has been fantastic. That is also why the 10 Million Names Project is important. And I appreciate your time today. It was so great chatting with you. I wish we had more time, but I know you need to go. But thank you so, so much for this conversation.
Catch up with you later. Thanks to everyone, and thanks to everyone behind the project. Keep pushing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Marc and Kenyatta, for that powerful and deeply important dialogue. I'm now delighted to invite Paula Madison to share a few words about the future vision for 10 Million Names. Paula is a journalist, author, business leader, and executive with a remarkable record of impact. In addition to serving as our 10 Million Names Advisory Board member and co-chair of tonight's host committee, she is chairman and CEO of Madison Media Management and 88 Madison Media Works. She spent more than 2 decades at NBC Universal, ultimately serving as executive vice president of diversity and as a vice president at General Electric, NBC's parent company at the time. She has long been recognized as a trailblazer in corporate and civic life, named one of the 75 most powerful African Americans in corporate America by Black Enterprise, and featured on Ebony Magazine's Power 100. She brings wisdom, vision, and a profound personal commitment to this work. We're so glad to have you with us. Over to you, Paula.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate being invited to participate. I appreciate being invited to be a part of 10 Million Names. And so here's where I tell you not only a little bit about me, but also why I got involved. So if you ask me here in the United States what my name is, it's Paula Madison. If you ask me in Ghana what my name is, I would say it's Nana Akosua-Banier. If you ask me in China what my name is, and I would tell you it's Lo Xiaona. How is that possible? Because my family hails from Jamaica, and more than 90% of Jamaicans are of the Akan or Ashanti people of present-day Ghana. My grandfather emigrated to Jamaica from China. And I will tell you right now, I can trace my Chinese lineage 3,000 years back to the year 1006 BC. It's all recorded. And when I tell you that when I try to trace my African Jamaican grandfather, my paternal grandfather, I can only find 2 generations back. And why? Slavery gets in the way. 10 Million Names is a project that I immediately turned to when my dear friend Dion Jackson asked me to participate. I turned to it because for so many years I was lost and unattached. I did not know where we came from ultimately, and I did not know how I was conceived of many generations back. 10 Million Names, in the short amount of time that I've been involved with 10 Million Names, it's given me a focus and a reason to understand that not only is it vitally important that we know our names and the names of our ancestors, but understanding that there is a real move and an effort going on to try to erase the institutional memory, the living memory, and the history and the legacy of who we are as people of the African diaspora. It's not about policy. It's about bringing families together. And in this very short time, we've recovered 1 million names so far. That means that for those of us who were conceived of in this nation or brought to this nation, and we're told that we just can't find any names, our families don't go any farther back, we've been told that we've accepted that, and now I'm here to tell you it's a myth. Thanks to Richard Cellini and his initiation of the 10 Million Names Project, that myth is now completely blown apart. You just heard from my friend Marc Morial, who I ran into on Martha's Vineyard last summer, and I told him about 10 Million Names, and Marc immediately said, count me in. Why? For the very same reason. But you don't have to be Marc Morial. You don't have to be Paula Madison. This is an initiative that is designed to bring into the household regular, ordinary people of African descent. That information that we are seeking with names, you heard Marc talk about in slave records, in trust accounts, on plantation lists and ownership records. Names are there. They are embedded in your family Bibles. They are embedded in the annals at HBCUs where people donated documents and donated books, and information was written in the creases. What we need now is we need the resources, the help to go in and find those names. We recovered the 1 million names with the help of many of you. One of my dear friends who used to work for me, the former president of ABC News, Kim Godwin, immediately signed up when I asked her if ABC News would help be a sponsor of 10 Million Names. And you heard Lindsay Davis and you heard Pierre Thomas, 2 of the anchors of ABC News, in a very short amount of time. With the assistance of 10 Million Names, we actually found records that pointed them to the names of ancestors that they never knew before. And it only took months. In some instances, it takes weeks. It can take moments in order to find those names. You've heard that we have a matching gift. There's a matching fund going on. And right now, for every $1, no gift is too small. For every $1 you give, it's going to be matched up to $500,000. Now, I've never been great at math, but that $500,000 match of $500,000 in donations will give us another 1 million names. We can identify 10 million African men, women, and children who were brought against their will to what is the present day United States of America. Oh, I'm hoping in the next iteration we'll go into the islands and we'll go into other parts of the Americas and we'll go into Europe for sure. But for now, let's start here. Let's start with 10 million names. What we were able to do in a very short amount of time when seeking the ancestor to Elizabeth Freeman, the formerly enslaved woman who in 1780 actually sued the state of Massachusetts for her freedom and won. We did that story. We found the one living ancestor who she has. Her name is Lisa Shepperson. Lisa had no idea that Elizabeth Freeman was her ancestor. And these stories are being uncovered and untold day in and day out. So here's where you come in. We have this live challenge. There are many of us, including my soror, who is Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, whose story was also uncovered by 10 Million Names and published recently. We've told also the story of, oh, where am I sitting right now? In Marc Morial's hometown, in my husband's hometown of New Orleans, where just recently we found that the newest Pope, Leo XIV, is a descendant of Africans from New Orleans' 7th Ward. And that information was uncovered by an African-American genealogist who's also very well connected and supported by the 10 Million Names Project. So my request, my ask of all of you, no amount is too small. Any amount, please give so that what we can do is tell the stories to our children, to our grandchildren, to our great-grandchildren, to our mothers and fathers who imagine the joy and thrill of our 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds and even 90-year-olds to learn that person has a name. We have names. Help us. Send us the donation. No amount is too small to help us uncover the names of the 10 million men, women, and children who were brought to these shores against their wills and who have names. Thank you so much for your time. Ryan, back to you.
Thank you, Paula. We're now going to turn to our viewer questions. For this part of the program, we'll be joined once again by Kenyatta Berry and Lindsay Fulton. Lindsay is a nationally recognized professional genealogist and lecturer who has been on the staff at American Ancestors since 2012. She leads the research, library, and database teams as our chief research officer, as well as the research team for 10 Million Names. Her work has been featured on PBS, such as Finding Your Roots, The Seedlings, a program inspired by Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates Jr., as well as another popular PBS series, Samantha Brown's Places to Love. Please use the question and answer feature in Zoom to submit your questions. To kick us off, Kenyatta and Lindsay, one of our viewers asks, is there a way that I can submit my research to help the project?
Absolutely. And that is what we are hoping for. Part of what makes 10 Million Names so beautiful is that we get to hear the stories that families have and the information that families have, and they want to donate that to our organization or share that with our organization. You can do that on the 10 Million Names homepage. So if you go to 10millionnames.org, on the homepage, one of the panels says Help 10 Million Names Research. You can click on that and it will give you a few different options of how you can share that information. We're looking for family trees. If you have research notes that you can scan and send to us, if you want to fill out a questionnaire, we try to make it as easy for you as possible. Please send in what you have. We're always looking for new information coming from families and organizations.
Thank you, Lindsay. Kenyatta, one of our viewers asks, how can this project find people that typically are only referenced by their first name? what are some of the research techniques that are used to advance this type of genealogical research?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, not most, a number of enslaved folks only are referenced by their first names. However, you can use a variety of documents. You heard Mark talk about it as well. And you can use estate records, look at wills and things like that. And through those records, right, you can have that first name that you will find, but you can tie them to the person who enslaved them or their enslaver. And then from that moment, or from tying them to that enslaver, you should be able to find additional information about the enslaver and that person, right? And so even though you have just one name, tying it to the enslaver and then bringing them forward, right, will help. I'll give you a great example. A lot of times, there are unique surnames and kind of, my last name Barry, very common, but a name like Shegog is very unusual. So if you know someone, if someone with the last name of Shegog can be easily tied to their enslaver, right? Because that person will be attached to them if you find them in 1870. So I think to kind of close it out, one thing to do is to make sure with your research for the estate records, for tax records, make sure you cite your sources, we always say, but also the other part of that would be to, take your time with your research, understand you never know what you're going to find. And even with the 10 Million Names Project, as we work through these stories, these are very hard stories to look at and to deal with. But just having one name doesn't mean you can't find a person, because you just have to dig a little bit deeper. I hope that answers the question, Ryan.
Thank you, Kenyatta. Lindsay, one of our viewers notes that 10 million names, finding 10 million names is a very ambitious and seemingly daunting endeavor. And so the question is, how have we organized the project to find the 10 million cumulative names of people who were enslaved in what is now the United States?
Yes, that was my major concern when the project first came. And I loved the idea, loved the concept, couldn't wait to start working on it. But knowing that looking for 10 million people all at once, it was going to be daunting, we started to think about, how do we break this up into maybe some smaller study projects? Which study project is a way of organizing the research that you're going to perform in a way that allows you to have some movement forward with that project. So American Ancestors has done one since the 1980s called the Great Migration Study Project that was looking at English immigrants from 1620 to 1640 to New England. So that puts a box around what we're looking for, right? So 10 million names is the same thing. We're looking for 10 million men, women, and children enslaved in the United States before 1865. It's a very large study project, but it's a study project. So what we did was we divided it up into 5 different, like, smaller study projects, which we're calling pilot projects. That's looking at people who were enslaved in a place. We're calling that Making America. So that's looking at census records, estate records, things that put people in a location. We have one that's called Journeys to Liberation. That's looking at records of mariners, migrants, freedom seekers. So sometimes you'll find what are sometimes referred to as runaway ads. We're looking at those to try to piece together family trees. The third is called On the Battlefield. That's looking at soldiers, veterans, and refugees. We're very aware of the men who served during the during the Civil War, sometimes referred to as the U.S. Colored Troops. We're looking at those folks, but we're also looking at people who are coming from, who are serving in different wars, like the Revolution, the War of 1812, and some of the colonial wars as well. The fourth is called Community Building. That's looking at the period mostly outside of the period of enslavement, looking at the records of Black institutions, that's HBCUs and Black-led churches. And then finally, the fifth is called Remembering Slavery. That is looking at some testimonials that are happening after emancipation and even during emancipation, because there were testimonials taken of people who were coming through the Underground Railroad that we're looking at, as well as the WPA interviews that were done in the 1930s and 40s. So we're trying our best to divvy it up to allow ourselves to focus rather than looking all for 10 million people at once.
Another viewer notes that we are obviously looking for philanthropic support, because one of the key components of the 10 Million Names Project is that all of this information is made available for free. In addition to philanthropic support, are there other ways people can volunteer for the 10 Million Names Project?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. We have a fantastic volunteer manager. Her name is Danielle Rose. She's always looking for volunteers to help with projects. And we have volunteer projects that run the gamut. We have volunteer projects that are for experts. We would love for people to help us build family trees. We're working on one that is specifically led by volunteers right now, looking at USCT soldiers, so soldiers who were fighting during the Civil War, who were serving out of Kentucky. And that's in partnership with an organization called The Reckoning. That is a project that's for an expert / intermediate genealogist. We also have projects where we're extracting information from original records. So in that case, we need you to be able to read cursive, which is a dying skill. And then we have others. If you're not comfortable with cursive, we do have other projects that can that people can help with, that are either in transcribing or reorganizing, editing information that's coming from printed material that might be a little bit easier to work on. So we will, all volunteering is helpful, and Danielle would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Lindsay. We have time for maybe two more questions here. Amazingly, we're running at the end of our program. One of our viewers asks, Kenyatta, do you have any recommendations for what someone should do when they run up against the 1870 brick wall?
Sure. So the first thing I would suggest is to look at the Freedmen's Bureau records for the area which you're searching in. So a great example is that I knew my family, my fourth great-grandfather was in 1870 in Madison County, Virginia. His name was Lewis Carter. And I was able to find a labor contract for Lewis Carter and a Dr. John W. Taylor, who I believe was his last enslaver. So the Freedmen's Bureau records were able to give me that information, because when I started researching in 1870, or excuse me, researching him and then saw him in 1870 census, I noticed he had a lot of land and property, right, and personal and real property. And so I really was trying to figure out sort of how he got this property. And I was able to understand that he was an agent, listed as an agent for Dr. John W. Taylor. And that gave me the connection to that Taylor family. And so through that labor contract, I found out more information about my fourth great-grandfather. I think that's a great place to start. They also have records, education records, but they also have court records. They also have records for hospitals and things like that. So that gets you beyond 1870 to that time, you know, during Reconstruction as well, but those records are by county or locale in the South, and those are actually available for free online as well. So that would be my first place to start.
Thank you, Kenyatta. And as a closing question, Lindsay, a viewer asks, are there any free ways that someone could get some reference assistance with their family history questions?
Absolutely. So we have a fantastic service called Chat with a Genealogist, or sometimes it's called Ask a Genealogist, live chat. And you can do that with expert genealogists that are employed by American Ancestors and 10 Million Names. They're available to help with questions about, you know, like, what do I do next? I've hit the 1870 brick wall and this is what I've done, and what should I do from here? They can also help with like if you're having trouble reading handwriting, they can help you to do that. Or if you're looking for specific resources to help with maybe historic context or to help further your research, they are phenomenal there. So you can get to that a few different ways. The easiest way is on the 10 Million Names website. You go to 10millionnames.org. You go to the homepage there. In the right-hand column, there's a title called Get Involved. And then underneath that, there's a link there that says Chat with a Genealogist. And that is free. It's Tuesday through Saturday from 10 to 6.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kenyatta and Lindsay, and thank you to our viewers for your thoughtful questions and engagement. And if we didn't get to your question, we're looking to send you information through the chat feature. So as we come to a close of this evening's program, I want to leave you with a reminder of the mission that brings us together. 10 Million Names is a national collaborative project dedicated to recovering the names and the stories of the estimated 10 million men, women, and children of African descent who were enslaved in what is now the United States. This project is not just about documenting the past, it is about restoring identities, reconnecting families, and honoring the humanity of those whose names were taken, lost, or buried. We seek to amplify the voices of those who have carried their family stories across generations, to connect researchers and data partners with descendants and seekers, and to expand public access to records, knowledge, and truth. In doing so, we are building not only a more complete historical record, but a more just and inclusive one. So as we close, I invite you one more time to take part in this essential work. You can scan the QR code on your screen and consider making a gift to the 10 Million Names Challenge. Every dollar you give between now and August 31st will be matched, doubling your impact and ensuring this project continues and remains to be free to users. Your support fuels the recovery of names, the reconnection of the families, and the preservation of stories that deserve to be known. If you believe in truth and remembrance and the power of history to heal, please help make this difference. We are deeply grateful for your time, your presence, and your commitment to this work. Together, we will recover, restore, and remember. Thank you.